3 months.
Okay, we'll go ahead and start this meeting. Good afternoon. Today is August 12th, 2025. It is 1 p.m. This is a regular meeting of the Mid-Kings GSA. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Joe Neves.
Here.
Richard Valley.
Here.
Doug Verboon.
Here.
Rusty Robinson.
Here.
Robert Thayer.
Here.
Kimber Regan. Absent.
We have 5 members present, 1 absent. At this time, would all please rise for Pledge of Allegiance. All the men who salute our nation's flag. Eddie.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Very good. We'll go into unscheduled appearances. Any person may directly address the board at this time on any item on the agenda or any other item of interest to the public that is within the subject jurisdiction of the board. 2 minutes are allowed. Do we have any written comments?
I have no written correspondence, no speaker cards, and it doesn't appear anyone online has their hand raised.
Anybody in the audience have anything they want to share today? Seeing none, we'll go to item A, which is approval of the minutes. Approval of the minutes from special meeting May 13th, 2025. Motion by Supervisor Robinson, second by Supervisor Neves. Do we have any questions from the audience? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Joe Neves.
Yes.
Richard Valley. Doug Verboon.
Yes.
Rusty Robinson. Robert Thayer.
Yes. 5 yes, 1 absent. We'll go on now to the consent counter. All items listed on the consent counter are considered to be routine and will be acted by one motion. For any discussion on an item on the consent counter, it will be removed by the request of a board member and made part of the regular agenda. What's your guys' pleasure?
Move is presented, Mr. Chair.
Motion by Supervisor Neves, second by Supervisor Thayer. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
I was just going to ask a question because it says consent calendar. There's nothing on it. So,
Oh, I'll be goddamn. So we'll go ahead and there's nothing there. And
Thank you, Robert.
sorry,
I know we were all like,
I
huh?
want to get this meeting over with. Seeing that we just had a
Senior moment.
faux pas, we'll go on now to regular calendar. Item A, Stakeholder Advisory Committee update from Garrett Gilcrease, Chairperson. Good afternoon, Garrett.
How are you guys?
Good, how are you?
Not much of a different update than last time. I mean, we're not meeting every week just due to schedules, but we're probably meeting every 2 weeks, I'd say. We got through a lot of different stuff. One of them I think is to today, which Amir's going to go through. Yeah, just still a lot of effort on our part to get something through for you guys that you'll have to approve. A lot of hard work going into it. So I think it's something that you guys will not enjoy, but will be okay with. And if you got any questions, ask Amir and I can help if I need to. So.
No, thank you. And thank you all for your dedication to do this. I know it's hard. Once a week was really hard. Once every other week is just as hard. I know we have harvest coming up for everybody in this room. So you take care of your ranch first and then come get together as you find time.
Yep,
So,
that's it. Awesome. Thank you.
Okay. Item B, consider adopting a resolution to establish domestic well mitigation program. And we have Amir. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I'm going to go through a short presentation. I'm going to give you a quick update on Sigma and the GSP, the Groundwater Sustainability Plan, while we're at it, and then I'm going to get into the well mitigation program. So I think one of the things that you'll notice right away is that you got a hard copy delivered to you today that is the formatted document. It is the exact same text as that was in your board package. We just went ahead and formatted it, put a nice little cover on there. So I just wanted to make sure that you're aware it's this exact same document otherwise. But you know, it's in color and it has a state-friendly cover to it as well. Okay, so next slide, please. So one of the things that I'm going to do, you're going to get probably real tired of seeing this map, but I want to make sure we just for yourselves and everybody in the audience to kind of help orient everybody as exactly where we're at and how the Mid-Kings River GSA is in relation to the other GSAs within the Tulare Lake subbasin. You can see in the northwest or east corner there is the Mid-Kings River GSA. To our west is South Fork, and then directly south of us is the El Rico, and then further south, of course, is Southwest Kings and the Tri-County Water Authority down there as well. Their lands. So that just kind of helps orient. And then the other subbasins is Kauai to our east, and the Tule subbasin to our east as well. Kings to the north, and Westland's west side subbasin directly to the far west of South Fork. It just kind of help orient everybody. The other map shows the actual Mid-Kings River GSA with some streets on there. And if anybody would like a copy of that map, Chuck has those available, and our stakeholder committee members have those as well. So I'm sure several people in the audience right now are probably trying to find out where their property is on that map. So, again, kind of help orient ourselves as we have some of our discussions. Next slide, please. So a quick SGMA update. Just a reminder for everybody that the injunction from the lawsuit filed by the Farm Bureau is still in place. The State Water Board attorneys have taken that to mean that there's no communication with Tulare Lake at all. And again, if I get any of this wrong, I'm sure legal counsel will correct me, but they've interpreted it that way. So there's no ongoing communication between the Tulare Lake subbasin and the state of the State Water Resources Control Board staff. They are talking to the other subbasins, of course, and they're making progress in the other subbasins. So one of the things that we're obviously doing, since we're not getting direct feedback from the state, is we're watching what's happening in the other subbasins. We're having a lot of communications with the other subbasins. We're making sure that we understand what it is that the state liked or didn't like about any of the plans that they are currently working on as well. And all of that leads to some of the information that, that in policies that we've been focused on. There's 4 major things that the state is really looking for. One is they really want to make sure that you've got some plan to avoid impacts. They want to see that you have a plan to mitigate impacts. They want to make sure that you are implementing your policies and that you have some way for some kind of enforcement of those policies as well. And a lot of what we've worked on all relate to those 4 key items. So the items that we've been working on is the well registration policy, the groundwater measurement policy, and the recharge policy. All 3 of those were previously approved by the board. As you can see, the well registration obviously is a big part of showing them that we're implementing our policies and our programs. The groundwater measurement policy, of course, is related to that. The recharge policy is also related, but the mitigation and the subsidence management plans that's still to be prepared are all going to be part of that enforcement and avoiding those impacts as well. What do we do if we have impacts? How are we taking care of those? So the domestic well mitigation program is what we're here to talk about today. The other ones that you see on there, the groundwater allocation and subsidence management, water quality management, are all things that we're working on. Honestly, the state right now has not approved anybody's groundwater quality program. There's still lots of discussions going on between the state and the other subbasins on what that's going to exactly look like. That's probably the last thing that we'll work on here in Mid-Kings. And concurrent with some of our other efforts, we're going to be preparing a new outreach plan as well. The people that have Kern right now got a 6-month delay on their request to be removed from probation because the state didn't feel that their outreach efforts were sufficient. So rather than go through that ourselves, we're going to update our outreach plan right now, and we're going to start doing some of those and start focusing on that. And part of that costs are also going to be shared with some of the other GSAs within the Tulare Lake subbasin. I'm going to stop to see if you have any questions just before I before I jump into the mitigation plan itself.
Any questions?
I just have one question, and you may have said it and I may have missed it, but when you talk, when this slide here, domestic well mitigation program,
Mhm.
is that including like the city of Hanford's wells?
Actually, I'm going to spend a whole bunch of the next 4
Okay.
slides or 8 slides, I think, are specifically related to that program, and that's the document you have in front of you.
Okay.
It is just a quick answer to your question, though. It is focused on rural domestic wells. Yeah. Okay. Mr. Chair, I'm going to keep moving.
Keep moving.
All right. All right. Next slide, please. Okay. The well mitigation plan, as we kind of indicated, the context for this is the state of California is looking for what are we doing if there are impacts to well owners. Our plan currently right now allows for water levels to drop below the 2015 water levels. And the reason we did that is to give our growers as much flexibility to implement things over the next 15 years. In the chance that we have an extended drought and our water levels continue to drop towards that value, we did an analysis and we basically said that up to about 90 different wells, based on the information we have today, may be impacted. That number can change depending on our well registration program. But again, those are the rural domestics that I'm talking about. So we are basically saying that, hey, we're going to allow water levels in drought years and extended drought years. They could drop down to that at the maximum level. I'm not saying that that's going to happen. I'm not saying that's our plan. I'm just saying that that's where we have set our minimum threshold, saying we don't want to be below this level. If that happens, we have impacts and we have to be able to mitigate for those impacts. That's what this program covers today. It goes through a variety of different portions of it. I'm going to quickly go through. You have the document in front of you. It's included in the board package, but I'm just going to hit some of the highlights of the program. Next slide, please. So the idea here is this program now is part of our groundwater sustainability plan. It will be included as an appendix to the document. And what it is to make sure that anybody whose domestic well is impacted has emergency water, has interim water. If you contact us, the idea is we are going to get you emergency drinking water and an interim water supply. Then we're going to work on some long-term solutions for some of the domestic wells. And then the program also is going to talk about how we're going to fund this program and how we're going to administer it as well. So those are all details we're going to discuss here in a bit. Next slide, please. And please stop me if you have any questions. There's obviously a lot more detail in the document itself, and I'm going to just hit on some of the key items. The program is intended to cover rural domestic well owners, communities, and municipal wells, including municipal wells. But they're on 2 different tracks, and I'm going to get into that into the next slide, and exactly how much we're going to cover for each one of those. But the idea again is if our rural domestic well owners are experiencing impacts due to water quality, due to water levels, due to subsidence on their wells, then this program is going to cover that. Okay, next slide. So as I mentioned, there's 2 tracks, right? The mitigation track means that we will step in, we will, figure out what's going on with their domestic well. Why did it go dry? If it's not related to water levels dropping, then it is not part of this program. We will still give them emergency water to get them through the immediate emergency. But at that point, if we deem it's not necessary that it was caused by water levels, it was caused by something else happening in their well, then that's up to the homeowner. And then we will give them some names and contact information of who can help them from there. But if it is due to water levels dropping in the area, then that becomes part of this program, and we will then take the necessary steps to mitigate that problem. That may mean a whole slew. There's a whole table in this of potential mitigation efforts that we would go through, including and up to, but not solely up to, the replacement of that well. And if we go in and replace your well, we will drill it to a depth that is below the value that we've deemed as the minimum threshold, so that this doesn't happen again and we don't end up replacing these wells on a regular basis. The other wells that we will cover, of course, are any multi-use wells, meaning they're used for both ag and domestic. And if we do that, we will cover only the domestic portion of that well. We will drill you a new well if we have to that replaces your domestic water supply. The technical assistance track is intended for the other wells, the community wells, the municipal wells. And in that case, we are just providing a technical assistance up to a fixed dollar amount. And the idea there is we would help you with grants, applications, help you with some design, help you with whatever you need as a technical assistance, but it is not the responsibility of the GSA, or nor is it the intention of this program to drill a brand new municipal well. So I'm just pausing just in case anybody has any questions. All right, next slide. Oh. Okay. So we talked about this on the eligibility. So one of the key items that is to remember that the impacts have to occur after January 1st of 2015. That's the date that Sigma starts, and that's the date that Sigma was implemented. So that's, if your impact occurred before that date, we understand, but it is not the responsibility and it is not covered under this program. And again, as I already mentioned, it has to be due to either groundwater levels dropping, land subsidence due to groundwater levels dropping, or groundwater quality impacts, again, from decreasing groundwater levels. That last statement's a little bit sometimes tough to define, but that's why some of the water quality issues that we're working through with the state right now have been such a challenge, is trying to define that. But we know it has to be covered by this program, and so we've included it in here. Next slide, please. So this is a little busy, and I apologize for that. It's a much nicer table, and there's a nice graphic in the document itself. I believe on page 6 of the document, there's a nice infographic in the document. We try to use as many of the infographics as we could, and some of them are very similar to what the state has already seen in the Kern and Kauai documents, so that we kept them similar as similar as we could. First things first, so quickly, is look, we will do an outreach, and I'm going to go through, there's a slide in here that will talk about all the steps we're going to take for the outreach. The next step is for the well owner then to identify that they have a problem. They know who to contact, they know who to get a hold of, they know how to do that, and we want to make that as easy for them as possible. So they contact the GSA in this case. We may in the future, and the document touches on this, in the future we may have partners. That hasn't been decided at this time, so right now we're having everyone contact the GSA directly. In the future, they may contact one of our teaming partners. The idea then is to get them some emergency water supply. As they fill out the forms, there's a number of forms, and I will guarantee you that these forms will change over time, because as we get better at this, and as we get information from Kauai and others that are going through this, we're going to update those forms appropriately. Once we have the information, we've done our evaluation. In the meantime, the folks who have the impact have drinking water, and they have interim water supply, meaning they also have water for cooking, for bathing, things of that nature as well. We're not there to make sure that the emergency supply or the interim supply isn't going to take care of their lawns or anything like that, but it is going to make sure that the people in the house have adequate water supply. Then we're going to go through and decide which mitigation track they need to be on. We're going to go through and evaluate the different mitigation options that might be the best for each one of them and their particular needs. Come back. Once that's selected, they will come back to this board. This board will ultimately have to approve whatever mitigation measure that we've selected, and of course the pricing for that as well, the fees and the cost of all that. Once the GSA has approved it, then we go and enter into a agreement with the landowner to indemnify the GSA, hold us harmless, and agree to put in that mitigation measure. And then at that time, they will get the mitigation measure installed. Exactly how that's going to work, whether they contract with, let's say, a driller or we do, all of that is still being worked out because those are some important details. We're also seeing, again, what Kuya, who's gone through a couple pilot programs, we're trying to see how all this was worked. We'll probably end up going through the first one, trying to see what makes the most sense, and then maybe have to modify this document a little bit based on exactly what makes the most sense. Hopefully, we can keep this to the fewest number of impacted wells. That would be the best answer, of course.
I guess I just have one question.
Yes.
That's do we have any idea what
cost
that is? Well, not necessarily the cost, but from 2015 till now, do we have any idea how many new wells have had to been lowered, or however they go about doing this, or drilled first, and then kind of maybe what the future impacts are based on what depths we'll have met now?
So we do know how many new wells have been drilled since 2015. We don't know why. So that's an important distinction, right? There may have been people, it may have drilled a new well for a whole slew of reasons. It may not have been that their well went dry. So we do know that. The other thing we did know, because Chuck reached out to Self-Help Enterprises and asked Self-Help directly how many people they're currently assisting through the state program, which is called SAFER, using those funds. And there's only one home right now that is currently on that program in the Mid-Kings River GSA. There's a lot more throughout Kings County, but they're not located in the Mid-Kings River GSA.
Well, am I correct in saying that? And that's just somebody that went to the self-help, not just went, oh, shoot, my well went dry.
Right.
Hey, well driller, can you and they just finance it on their own, having no clue that any of this stuff happening. So I guess the second follow-up, because I was told this, it's been about 18 months ago, just an example. So I guess this would be kind of a clarifying thing going back to 2015. People live in the country, they're not farmers, but they raise sheep, a couple acres on their parcel, but a neighbor a mile up the road puts a brand new well in. I don't know how deep they go, but once their well went live, this well went empty.
Right.
And so then they're scrambling to come up with 25, 30 grand, whatever it was to fix it. And it's fixed now, but would that kind of fall within your definition of water levels? Is that what would cause that?
Yeah. So we are not going to go back and mitigate or pay for anyone's wells that have already taken care of their problem. So I just want to make sure that was clear. It's in the document. But the scenario you described is certainly real, and it would be covered by this in the future. So anyone who's experiencing that kind of where their well goes dry because increased pumping in the area, and because we as a GSA say it's okay to pump down to a certain water level and their well goes dry, then yes, they would be impacted and they would be eligible for this program.
So then what's the point of taking it back to 2015? As it relates specifically to mitigation, if
we're not going back and fixing those old wells.
So there's there's nothing that those folks, they did it on their own. They're just kind of.
Yeah, it is unfortunate. I certainly understand and sympathize. I certainly understand your point, but it's very hard to go back and be able to evaluate, yes, that this well that was fixed in 2018 was done because of this reason. And there's one of the concerns at the stakeholder committee, which, by the way, I should mention, Garrett was very modest. These guys have been working very hard and meeting on a very regular basis, and they're giving up a lot of their time, which is very much appreciated. But a lot of, sometimes they've raised some very important points about, hey, how do we know that this, and we don't want someone taking advantage of this program and things of that nature. And so ultimately it was decided, our recommendation was that, hey, we don't cover those, but we cover everybody moving forward. I think, the other question or that you might be thinking about is how's the state going to react to that? And it is language that is similar to what Kuya and Kern have put in their documents as well. So that also kind of made us feel a little bit more comfortable that the state has accepted that they won't come back and ask us for the same, for something different.
And I appreciate it. I'm just trying to educate
Sure,
myself
sure,
along the way.
of course.
So as thoughts pop into my head, I appreciate you answering those.
Yeah.
And I think the state program has been existing since 2015.
Yeah,
So some of those may have been
covered under safer. Yeah.
Safer.
Director Neves is right. There are other impacts that we are well aware of that have been addressed by the SAFER program, and it's literally there for legacy programs like this. We've been told very clearly that those funds are not going to be available moving forward for the GSA's program. Okay, I'm going to keep moving. Okay, next slide, please. The technical assistance. So this is the community wells, municipal wells, industrial wells, or potable use industrial wells, I should say. Again, we are going to evaluate each one of those. We do have, we've put a budget aside of up to $30,000 to provide technical assistance. Doesn't mean we're giving them cash. It just means that we're giving them that amount of money in support. Either means, hey, we'll fill out a grant application for you. We'll do a well design for you. We'll do a feasibility studies. We'll do what is necessary to help them get that well back, short of actually having to go out there and actually drill a brand new well. So the way we're treating community systems and municipal wells and industrial wells is very different. And there is a dollar amount tied to that. Whereas for the rural domestics, we want to be able to make sure that they get the emergency water supply. Now, look, if a community calls us tomorrow and says, hey, our well's down and we need some support, that's something that the GSA is going to have that conversation, obviously, with the board. And we want to be able to, work as closely as we can with our neighbors and the people within the GSA as close as we can on those issues. So there are some, items where we may come back to the board and say, hey, we think this is worth, a additional support. Next slide, please. Okay. Couple of supporting documents that are attached to this program. One is the application forms, and the other one is the mitigation and indemnification agreement. Both of those I fully expect are going to be modified and updated over time. I think legal probably right now is probably thinking about how they're going to change the agreement anyway. So I think all of those, so I wouldn't worry too much about those. I think those will be updated as necessary. And if we go to more electronic paperwork and making it easier on the website, just to, hey, somebody wants to apply for an application, they can do it on the website. So all of these types of things are going to happen as we get into the program some more. I think there's one more slide, if I remember correctly. Yes. Oh, the outreach. Yes. So outreach is a critical part of this. This is one of the main issues that the state will be looking for. They want to know that your program is easy to implement, that people can get to it. They want to know that they are aware of it. And then thirdly, they want to make sure that you're funding the program as well. So our plan right now is to mail flyers to all landowners within the Mid-Kings River GSA. We're going to hold at least 2 public workshops to make sure that people are aware of the mitigation program. As we get our well registration program up and running, we're going to make sure that we have contact information for those rural domestic well owners. And we're going to send out emails to make sure that they're aware of this program. And then we're going to host a mitigation plan on our website in a prominent place on the website, and keep as we continue to have meetings with the board, we'll continue to make sure that people are aware that this program does exist. Next slide, please. And then finally, this is the key one. We have to fund this program. That is absolutely one of the things that the state wants to know. How are you funding this program? How is it going to be in place? How are you going to ensure that you have adequate money? So in any budget process, we went through, we looked at how many potential wells could go dry through our process based on the best information we have today. And that is on a state database that we think could use a lot of work, and we don't think is necessarily reflective of the wells that we have, but it is the best data source that we have right now. So based on that, we figured up to about 90 potential wells could go dry. And then what we did is, for budgeting purposes, we planned that up to 30 wells within a 2-year period would go dry. And so that's how we wanted to make sure that we had adequate budget for those. Now, exactly how many go dry in any one time is, right? None of us have a crystal ball. So for budgeting purposes, this is the assumptions we made. It comes up based on discussions, based on outreach to well drillers, based on discussions with the stakeholder committees, all these types of inputs. We figured about $65,000 per well. And then we figured, in addition to that, $30,000 for those the community wells and the track, the technical track. So we budgeted $2 million. That's a reserve fund. We'll draw on that as we start to draw that down. Then we'll start to fill it back up once it hits certain thresholds. And the funding source for that $2 million is going to be groundwater pumping fees. Now, separate from this presentation, I'm going to talk a little bit about the overall budget as well, and how this number is going to tie into that overall budget. That was one of the questions that the stakeholder committee kept asking, is like, hey, you're asking us to talk about and approve a program, but it's being done a little bit in isolation. And so we did kind of step back and look at that. So that's my next presentation I'm going to get to in a bit. But this is what we're asking for the initial funding for this program. I think that's the last slide, if I remember correctly. Yes. Questions?
Any questions from the board?
Chair, the degrading of quality, is that the organics and the inorganics? Are we just talking about inorganics, or are we just talking about quantity?
So there's in Tulare Lake, there are 7 compounds that were specifically identified, and it's by us, and the board confirmed that in their letter, their staff report that put us on probation. Those are the compounds that we're going to be focusing in on. And if the water quality for those start to exceed the drinking water standards for those compounds, then now, if they already exceed those in some areas, because, for example, nitrates, unrelated to what happened, for the last 10 years, then we have some provisions in place for that as well. But yes, it is, Director Neves, it is, it's a difficult one, because we don't have, great water quality data for individual domestic wells for every one of those compounds. So we're going to be working closely with those well owners and try to figure out the best way to do that. And this question, by the way, is also being debated in every surrounding sub-basin as well.
And since we're tying it back to water levels of 2015, are we going to, because the state is notorious for always changing quality.
Yes.
And so are we going to be tied to current or existing? Or are we going to be continually chasing the ball as the state continues to change the quality standard?
That's a very good question. As I mentioned, on one of those early slides, we still have to prepare that groundwater quality plan, and we do plan on addressing that very question in that plan. I went through the Thule plan recently, and that's one of the unknowns still, that the state hasn't commented on that. Like, if you agree to a drinking water an MCL standard today, and it gets lowered in the future, are we going to be held to that? And my personal opinion is yes, the state, the Director Neves, this, the state water board knows one thing, and they're really good at it. It's water quality, right?
I don't think they're good.
Well, okay, let me rephrase that. That's their laser focus. Yeah. That's what I meant to say.
Correct. And unfortunately, they just, again, keep changing the ball and playing a different game.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is outreach. We talk about ownership because we have that, but what about renters?
Yeah, we want to make sure that we're reaching out to everybody who's aware, so that everyone, and this issue came up also in the stakeholder group. We do want to make sure we're reaching out to the renters as well. So we do want to make sure that every property is receiving some kind of information, and as we do that outreach, those are specifically people we want to make sure contact them.
Thank you, Mr.
My question would be, it's the responsibility of the property owner. So we all know we have water quality issues. We all know things change over time. I know where I've lived, the well was drilled probably sometime in the 40s or 50s. Quality is not as good today as it was then. So I had to put on my filter system. I've had my quality of my water checked with Delaval, it's like $35. Can you just come make a claim to the GSA and say, well, my water's bad, you need to pay for it? Or is there going to be a baseline at one point they can prove that their water quality was good to begin with?
Yeah, we are going to have to come up with some bumpers on the water quality and how what we're going to consider and how the baseline value was derived. If we ask somebody to give us data for 2015 water quality, they're not going to have it, most likely. Most rural domestic folks are not going to have that at all. So we're going to have to come up with a baseline and say, look, this is what we determined to be the baseline in this area was. And if we can show that pumping is causing the degradation of that groundwater quality, then that application, we would have to move forward. But we don't have to go through and do new wells and things of that nature. There may be under the sink type treatment that we can put in place instead.
Yeah, I had to put a system on my well itself. My neighbors all have those too, with a silicon filter, industrial style, where it just takes the garbage out of that way your blinkers don't plug up, your shower heads don't plug up. Water tastes fine. It's just that at some point it is responsible to the landowner to take care of his own well. It shouldn't be all of our, just because now we have money put in the pot doesn't mean that we have to pay for everybody's problems.
Right. We don't want to give that impression, and we certainly don't want that to be the intent of this program.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I got just a couple questions. So the $2 million, it was on the slide before this, you're considering that to be the operating budget?
Yes.
Is that right? And then, do you have any idea what that breaks down to per per acre foot of pumping? But is there a dollar value associated with that?
Not from an acre foot
Or however you pump
standpoint.
water, however water is calculated when it's pumped. I know that when this was in the hands of the other group before it bounced back over here,
Sure.
that there was talk about that. It was like $70 pumping fees. Is that
Okay. Yes.
is that what you're
Next
suggesting
item.
is going to make up this budget? This $2
Yeah.
million
So
budget?
the next presentation I'm going to do, I'm going to walk you through that and show you what those dollar amounts are going to be.
And then I guess in the same time, on the timeline of that, how long does it take to collect $2 million?
So we think our plan is to collect that money in the first 2 years of the program.
And then the third, and I'm shooting from the hip, folks, because I'm still new to this. I'm still new to trying to get a really good understanding of this. But let's just say I'm a local landowner, and I recharge 100 acre feet of water into a recharge basin. Am I going to get, when I pump my 100 acres that my savings account I just put into the ground, am I going to have to pay that pumping fee a second time?
Yeah.
I paid to put money in a savings account. Now you're going to charge me to take my money out of my savings account?
Yeah.
I guess
So
that's kind of the question I'm asking.
we've gone through that debate as well, and that's an excellent question. But yeah, ultimately what we settled on, and again, I'm going to get in a little bit more detail, is that every acre foot that you pump is going to have a fixed fee attached to it.
And then I might be putting cart in front of the horse. But does all of this come down to still to a 218 election? Am I getting that
Yes.
terminology right? So,
Yeah.
so everybody that would be involved in this is going to, not just this board, but globally in the mid kings are going to go, oh yeah, we like all these ideas.
Yeah.
I vote yes.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
is that how this is working?
And hold that thought a little bit, because I
Okay.
literally am going to touch on all of
Okay.
that on the next presentation. I understand. I had to separate these two out because this program I'm asking you to approve this program today. We are not asking you to approve a budget today, and that's one of the reasons that we broke it out separately.
Okay.
This 2 million though is included as part of this mitigation program.
If this passes.
If this passes, yeah.
So any other questions from the board? We have a motion. Motion by Supervisor Robinson, second by Supervisor Valley. Any questions from the audience that we didn't cover or didn't ask today?
I just have one more question.
Oh,
So the 2 million is a hypothetical. I mean, I know we're getting ready to vote on this, but let's just say something falls off the side of the cliff. Are we still responsible for this $2 million setting at that figure today? Because what if you don't hit it? What if it's voted down? No, who comes up with the $2 million? I guess is my question.
Well, we haven't got to that point. That's the next item. Right now, yeah.
Okay.
We can't make it work without the second one. Because we're gonna have to tabulate who pumped what water. And then after we do this for a year or two, we'll know who takes more water out of the ground. Their fees are a little higher than the guys that don't take water out of the ground. So we'll have a better model at that time. Am I correct?
yeah. The idea, of course, is, the things that we've already approved, the well registration, so we know where all the wells are and realistically, how many rural wells might be impacted. And then secondly is that well measurement. So we start to measure exactly how much, or close to how much everybody's actually pumping. And then there will be fees attached. There'll be some land-based fees and there'll be some pumping fees. This particular program will be covered under the pumping fee side. So if you're not pumping water, you're not obviously causing well.
And so that ties into your meters on your well and self-reporting.
Yes. Yes.
Because we don't have staff to go monitor. So be up to the individual to share his data.
Yes.
So, yeah, we
I'm
have a
sorry.
motion in a second. And so if there's no more discussion or questions and nothing from the audience, we'll go ahead and do a roll call vote.
Joe Nevs,
Yes.
Robert Thayer,
Yes.
Richard Valley,
Aye.
Doug Verboon, Rusty Robinson, Kimber Regan. Yes.
Okay, we have 6 in favor. Let the record be known that City of Hanford has shown up. And we can move forward for the next item, which is going to be, and item passes. We'll go on to item C, study session on future direction.
Yeah, so this gets right back, is obviously we put these two together for this very purpose. So this is a study session. We're not asking you to make any decisions today, but we need to start opening up the discussion with the board on how we're going to fund this agency, how much money we're going to need, what's the best way to fund it. And part of all that conversation is an idea from the board as to what you see as the role of the agency, meaning, do you see it as a planning and a administrative agency, in which case we only need a certain amount of fees and costs, or the other extreme being you're very hands-on, you're doing projects, you're actually building recharge basins or whatever other types of projects. You're doing you're spending money on big programmatic CEQA documents, things of that nature. So there's an idea and a discussion that probably needs to take place at a board level as to how you see the role of this agency. I'm not asking you to make that decision today. I'm just bringing up some of these as part of this discussion for today. So next slide, please. As I mentioned in the previous document or the previous presentation, I should say, all of this was predicated on the fact that during the well mitigation discussions, we brought up the $2 million. The stakeholder advisory committee said, hey, wait a minute, you're asking us to approve something in kind of a vacuum, right? How does all of this tie together? What kind of numbers are we talking about? and what's this overall budget likely to look like? So Chuck and I sat down. We tried to put together with the basic information and that we have to date a preliminary 5-year budget, presented that to the shareholder committee or stakeholder committee. And that budget was then divided into 2 parts, one being these ongoing administrative fees and costs, and then a more variable one, which is the implementation. So I'm going to walk you through both of those right now, what that actually means. Next slide, please. And again, this is a study session, so I would encourage any of the board members or to ask any questions as I'm going through this. So the fixed costs. So one of the first things we have to do as an agency is we need to pay back some of the expenditures and monies that were spent by the Kings County Water District, the City of Hanford, and Kings County to keep this agency afloat over the last few years. And so that's the first line item, because we've got to pay back those three agencies as part of this. And then we looked at what those administrative costs are going to be. So for an approach that takes the more, hey, we're just a planning agency, we're more of an administrative agency, we're looking at just a couple of staff, meaning a manager and an assistant, office space, the normal office expenditures, things of that nature. The consultants would be legal, engineering, and any type of inspection that needs to be done by the GSA. Those would all be subbed out to third parties. And then the operations, or what I'm calling kind of the operations of the GSA, the ongoing operations, which is ongoing outreach, all the reporting that's required by the state, meaning the annual reports, the groundwater sustainability plan updates every 5 years, the groundwater monitoring, so both water level monitoring as well as water quality monitoring, monitoring well installation for additional wells. That may be brand new wells, or it may be just working with landowners to say, hey, you've got a well, can we use your well, and contract with them and things of that nature. Some of I call it software, but it's really the software we need for the well registration program and the ET monitoring, meaning the satellite monitoring that we're doing for Land IQ and measuring ET, because that's still part of our
question.
Oh,
So,
yes,
Mayor,
sorry.
I know DWR has a well they monitor every square mile in our county up to Kansas Avenue. I know they monitor some past Kansas Avenue, but they've been doing that for years. They measure it twice a year. They come out and they check it. Can we have access to their data?
Yeah, we can. And they're actually going to stop doing a lot of that. They've sent us notes that they're going to stop doing a lot of that, and they're expecting the GSA to pick up some of that.
I know Bill Schaefer, he ran that. It went through his office, Schaefer Associates. So
Yeah.
his son-in-law went out there and would measure it on weekends. So we'll have to pick up where they left off.
That's the
Can we
intent.
have their data
Yes,
if we do? Okay.
yes. At least that's my understanding from talking to DWR, that all of that data, anything that was collected for the state is public information.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, how do you access that?
We'll have to work through DWR to get permission for everything.
Yeah. I know I gave them permission years ago to do one of my wells. And so I know every square mile there's a well that they monitored. I just asked that they would write the number down outside, because I was curious as well what my
So
water savings.
some of the things, Chairman Verboon, that you're talking about is Kings County Water District is still handling. And we then work with Kings County Water District to get their data, because they're handling some of
Kings
these.
County Water District measured wells.
Yeah, they're through some of the programs that they have.
Right?
Yeah.
But I know Schaefer Associates, it was their staff that was doing the work.
Right. And then we're obviously coordinating with the district to get any water levels that the district has as well. That's been ongoing now for some time.
Okay. And you asked earlier about what we look to be in the future about basins and recharging.
Yeah.
But it gets real touchy when we start talking about surface water versus groundwater.
Absolutely.
Got to work
Yeah.
our way around that.
Yeah.
We'll need relationships.
Yep.
Okay.
Absolutely. Again, all of this is a study session just to throw out, get the board. We haven't met in 3 months, 2 months. So it's to kind of start thinking about and getting feedback from you all as to where you're thinking that you'd like to see this agency headed.
thoughts? Okay, team, sorry about that.
No, that's all right. So again, we're calling these fixed costs, but these are really the costs associated with just keeping the doors open for the agency, right? This is the bare minimum that we'd have to do, and the expectation that the state has for this agency. Next slide, please. So that, oops, oh, that didn't work. We have then some variable costs, and these are all related to the different programs that we're going to be putting into place, meaning the well mitigation program, which you just approved a few minutes ago. This gets back to the question, I think, about what happens about the money that's being raised and how we're going to do that. It also includes any water quality mitigation, meaning that, hey, if we have to go in and put in some kind of mitigation treatment device under somebody's sink or at their faucet or wherever on their well, maybe that's cheaper than drilling a new well. That is included in here. And then the last one is the subsidence and what we're going to do, the mitigation for subsidence impacts. And that's a difficult one to answer. I'm going to be frank with you. Some of the other subbasins have taken the stance that, if somebody's canal system is suffering a subsidence impact, that the GSA is going to step in and be that program would be eligible for some kind of mitigation program. The other GSAs have taken different approaches to that. Hey, if you're part of the pumping and you're moving water, that canal system is your members of that district or are part of what's causing the problem, and so you should they should take care of it themselves. So there's some pretty broad interpretations of how different subbasins or GSAs have handled that particular
You
issue.
have a canal and you're over pumping, you're not using the water in the canal.
Yeah, yeah,
Something else going on there too.
yeah. So there's a lot of the subsidence one is going to require a lot more discussion. We have not yet had that discussion at the stakeholder committee. We're trying to get through all of those other issues, and then we know that this is one of those ones that we know we're going to have to deal with, and it's going to require a lot more discussion, and could be very, very, very expensive, right? So we're trying to figure out exactly what the GSA would be responsible for and what we would not be responsible for. I know that's not a great answer. I understand I'm being a little vague, but that discussion still needs to take place. It can get, like I said, it can get very expensive in a hurry, and we want to be very careful what we commit to there. Okay, next slide, please. All right, the funding mechanism. So right now, based on discussions with the stakeholder committee, we are talking about funding the administrative costs through a land-based assessment. So that would be the Prop 218 that was asked about earlier. And so we would go through a Prop 218 process. It would be on people's land assessments, and everyone would pay that. And everyone would benefit because you live in the GSA. Obviously, the more property you own, the more benefit you're going to get, and vice versa. So the decision there was to think about doing that as a land-based assessment. The variable costs on the implementation, we decided that we would do that through a groundwater pump, or suggested that we do that through a groundwater pumping fee and a Prop 26 process. So both of those, that's what we're thinking about now, is keeping those two very separate. Hey, this is what we need to do to keep the doors open on the GSA. Those would be paid through land-based assessment. Everyone would contribute. And then those that are pumping would be paying for some of the variable costs and the mitigation costs and things of that nature. Next slide, please. Okay, so I'm going to say, I know I'm going to say this. I know no one's going to listen to me, but these are incredibly preliminary numbers. Okay. I will repeat that again. These are very preliminary. These are absolutely subject to change, and these are not the final numbers at all. They may be, but they can change depending on all the discussions that we have with this board. So what the state I need more explanation, exclamation points there. Yeah. Okay. I think, I was repetitive there. I said they're not only preliminary, but they're estimated. So I know once I throw a number out there, invariably someone will approach all of you in a coffee shop and ask you about these numbers. So what we're suggesting right now is a land-based assessment somewhere in the neighborhood of about $19 an acre, and a variable pumping fee of about $15 per acre foot. So every acre foot of water that is pumped in the GSA would pay that $15 back to the GSA, and the GSA then would use that for the mitigation programs that we talked about. These numbers were derived on a budget that was, as I kind of said, based on some very preliminary numbers that we had. It was based on our best estimate on what we're going to be paying for the variable costs. We have a kind of a feel for at least our best estimate on the mitigation, but subsidence, I'm not sure. We just had to estimate the best we could on some of those. There will be a complete breakdown of line item budget for all of you to take a look at. But before we do that, the intent was not to do it at today's meeting. The idea here was to kind of give you an idea of where we're talking about, where we're headed. But what we'd like to do is have one more study session. And I'm going to talk about what that study session is going to cover in just a second, and then come back to this board at the following meeting and present to you, the budget, so that you guys have some basis of how some of these numbers were derived. And then you also can give us some feedback as to some things that you would like us to focus in on as well.
Well, I would ask to focus in on public outreach so that you don't get accosted at the coffee shop and get blamed for something that they should have been part of it in the beginning.
So I will tell you there is a line item for public outreach.
Okay.
Yeah. And it continues, by the way, that number it's not a one and done. That number actually, the way that we have for the first 5-year budget continues on for some time.
Yeah, the biggest problem I see is people that they assume it's getting done, and then they call and they hear a rumor, and they want to argue about something that's not even true.
Yeah. Right.
And is this, are we still talking, this is just rural areas within the Mid-Kings? So like, for example, City of Hanford, obviously they're funneling water to a lot of homes in the City of Hanford. I'm assuming they're going to pump a lot of $15 per acre foot, or is that not included in these numbers? Or how is the city going to contribute to this financing?
We estimated the amount of water that the city's been pumping historically, looking at their general plan about what their growth patterns are, and then we assigned a value to them. So the city would be contributing to this. They would be paying the $15.
This same metric here.
So, and if you live in the city, your land assessment would be at $19 an acre, although most of those would be a fraction of that number, right? Because most people don't have an acre land within the city.
Yeah, like 3.5 homes per acre.
Okay, and not that it's important, but do you recall that when the 218 vote failed, whenever that was 18 months ago, what that per acre, was it like 70? Am I
95? Yeah.
So a little more palatable, obviously, seeing this number.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Yes.
I'm nobody. I would just suggest, a before and after,
Sure. As part of the public
just
outreach.
As a reminder
Right.
because I mean, I know it was a significant number.
Yeah. But it's not apples and apples, because the role that was envisioned for the GSA for that funding mechanism was much larger than what is being proposed right now, where this is much more of a focused administrative type of agency. And again, that gets back to the feedback from this group over the next couple of meetings and an understanding of how you envision this agency acting in the future, so that we can go ahead and finalize these budgets. Can I get the next slide, please? Okay, so the next study session, obviously the conversation about what the role of the GSA is. And then our plan is to present to you some additional information on the process of and the options for that fee election, go through some of the logistics that we have to go through, make sure that this group understands completely what the commitment is for a Prop 218 versus the Prop 26, how and obviously get legal support on that and walk you through both of those election processes and how that would occur. Talk about where the schedule and where we would envision the fee election actually happening again. Are we looking at doing both at the same time? Are we looking at doing both or them at separate times? Trying to figure out exactly where in the schedule we can do this, where we need to be in order to get it on the county rolls for the land assessment, how much time we need for public outreach, and what that plan for public outreach looks like. Because it's great for me to stand up here and tell you guys this, but again, if you're getting accosted in coffee shops and other places, that's not a win. So we understand that we've got to do a better job on our outreach, and we are under the contract that I have with you, we're going to be going ahead and preparing an update to the outreach program from the last one that was done was like 2018, I guess I should say, probably, I think was the last one, or 2019. So we want to update that and talk about some of the new ideas that we have and make sure that we, while we're doing the well mitigation, we can also be doing the same. People are also going to be getting information on what this fee election is going to look like, or elections. Again, some very important logistical issues that still have to be worked out. And that we want to do one more study session, at least one more. Maybe, again, depending on feedback from the board, we may do some more with the board. But we want to make sure we start to answer some of those kind of questions for you as well, and anything else that you might have for us.
Yep, another study session.
Yeah.
Real quick, do you know what the average size ranch farm, above the 2 acre threshold? Is it 100 acres? Is it 1,000 acres? Is it?
We actually do have a breakdown. Chuck, I'm kind of, I don't know if we have an average, because
like 200 to 300 in there someplace.
Yeah, averages tend to be a little bit misleading sometimes. But we can give you an idea of how many are above each, maybe, set a certain threshold and say, okay, how many are above 1,000 acres? How many are above 500? The reason I picked 500, of course, is from the state. If you guys all remember, before the injunction came in place, the state was looking at some of those types of information as well. So we can do a breakdown for you and get that information and maybe do it by some thresholds.
Like I just used 300. This is Mount Whitney math, by the way. So $19 an acre, 300 acres, $5,700 on top of whatever property tax you're paying already.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and to give you an idea, the neighboring GSAs, I'm going to get myself in trouble for saying this. The neighboring GSAs, for the most part, are less than that. Some of the North Fork or North Kings sub-basin north of us are paying similar types of numbers on a per acre basis. And some folks in Kuya are paying substantially more on a per acre foot basis, substantially more. In fact, most of the GSAs are paying higher pumping fees than what's proposed here in surrounding us, but less on the per acre basis in general. Again, there's obviously exceptions to that.
And just for the record, I realize this is being streamed out, probably out on YouTube, I'm assuming. Just so for anybody that's listening in on this, how many GSAs are there in Kings County?
5.
So there's five separate bureaucracies all trying to fund themselves with
Yeah.
$2 million or whatever it is.
Now, remember, in portions of the lake bottom, there's very few wells. Yeah, very few domestic wells. Thank you. Yeah, very few domestic wells. So their likelihood that they're going to have, Mid-Kings River GSA by far has the most domestic wells in it of the Tulare Lake subbasin.
If I could correct one thing real quick, there are 5 GSAs within the Tulare Lake subbasin. There are additional GSAs within Kings County as a whole.
Yes, portions of Kings County are in, yeah, right, in the north, Kings, yeah. Yes. Thank you, Chuck. Yeah. Okay, Kimber, yeah, I'm sorry.
I'd like to say something really fast. At our city council meeting last Tuesday, we had, they showed a preliminary idea for what they want to do for the East Lacey extension on a map that they want to do. And I brought up that I don't feel like it's necessarily conducive to what we need to take and do and be fighting for our farmers, because they're talking about putting in a lot of trees and a lot of shrubbery. And me personally, I would prefer if it's more simplified, more roads and everything else, because I feel like it's not taking into consideration what our farmers are dealing with. And it would be using a lot of water and a lot of extra expenses to make it fancy. And I don't feel like it's necessary in an industrial area. So I would like to encourage the public to take and reach out and kind of look at it. It would have been at the 4 o'clock study session and see, because I feel like we need a lot of public input for that to take and make sure that it's not becoming super pretty and being more functional. And that's my opinion. And some of the other people don't necessarily have the same opinion as mine, but I just feel like we need to fight for our farmers and our water. Anyway, thank you.
So Chuck and I are going to be meeting with the city specifically to talk about some of the updates of the urban water management plan that is currently being prepared, and how we see the city participating in this effort, in Sigma, and some of the projects and management actions that they can take to continue to reduce their water supply, or at least reduce the rate of growth type of thing. So yeah, that's an ongoing discussion that we're going to have with the city and all the other urban areas as well. All right,
Keep going.
that's it for me. I think that's my last slide.
Okay, we'll look forward to the next study session.
In the mirror, Tyler.
Wow, tough crowd. Man, I thought I was going to get away without any. The good news is that we are working towards getting out of probation. And getting out of probation also means that the plan is to get out before the injunction gets lifted. Look, I have no insight on when that might happen. It might happen tomorrow, right? But the plan is to get out and not have to pay the state their fees.
Wasted money.
They have borrowed $5.5 million from other funds within the state to fund the State Water Resources Control Board, Sigma group. And our plan is to have a proof plan and get out before those types of fees kick in. And again, it's not, there's no guarantees in life, but that's part of it. And if we can save our growers, $6 million, then absolutely worth it. And so, yeah, I realize that's not good news, but it is progress towards that.
Okay, we'll move on now to the next item, and it's going to be consider appointing a secretary to the Mid-Kings River GSA. And Chuck, you're going to take that up.
I am. Thank you. So as I was working with council on a couple of the items that are still to come in this, it became clear that the JPA that currently exists for the Mid-Kings River GSA outlines specific roles of officers and staff and the general manager is not one of those. And so currently, I have been serving as a general manager of the GSA. I was doing the duties of the secretary. However, I technically do not have that authority per the JPA, and therefore am requesting that you consider appointing a secretary position so that that can be covered for the GSA.
Okay, any questions from the board?
Yes.
Who wants to be the secretary?
That appointment come with the cost? So they would be doing.
No, we don't have the rule. It wasn't written up in the language that have a manager. We need a secretary. So he will be called the secretary, not the manager.
I don't know, wouldn't it be easier to amend the language to allow the manager to perform the duties of the secretary? Because you were already, right?
I could have council prepare a revised JPA, and we could take it to the City of Hanford and to the Kings County Board of Supervisors for amendment.
Will make your life easier, that or getting.
You could appoint the general manager as the secretary to the GSA.
Secretary.
How about we do that? Second.
Motion by Supervisor Nev, second by Supervisor Valley. Oh, any questions from the audience? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Joe Nevs,
Yes.
Robert Thayer,
Yes.
Richard Valley, Doug Verboon,
Yes.
Rusty Robinson, Reagan,
Cost more money.
Kimber Regan.
Yes.
Okay, so it passes 6 in favor, and we'll move on now to the next item, which is consider an agreement for Geosyntec for sustainable yield study. Mr. Kinney,
Yes.
Secretary Kinney.
Thank you. So back in 2022, the Mid-Kings River GSA authorized the hiring of Geosyntec consultants to facilitate the management and implementation of the Round 1 Sustainable Groundwater Management Act implementation grant that the GSA did receive from the state in the amount of $7.6 million. That grant was designed to do 5 different types of components. First being paying for the administration of the grant, second being the construction of a new recharge basin, as well as improvements to several other existing recharge basins, which were implemented by the Kings County Water District. Third is a reclamation project along the Kings River, which was implemented by the Kings River Conservation District. Fourth was to provide modifications to an existing overspill basin to develop it for recharge and storage, which has been implemented by the Corcoran Irrigation District. And 5, it provided the basin assessment studies, which included updating of the groundwater sustainability plan and an update to the groundwater model of the entire subbasin. Over the course of this grant, not all of those expenditures have come in as high as anticipated. And so the 5 general managers of the 5 GSAs within the Tulare Lake Subbasin got together and agreed that what would work best for the 5 different GSAs would be to see if state would allow for an amendment to the grant to authorize some of the funding to be utilized to repay the 5 GSAs for costs associated with updating the water model, which was not fully covered by the grant, as well as providing for the allowance of a sustainable yield study to be added as an eligible activity to the grant, as the entire subbasin needs that as a basis going forward for their GSPs. Geosyntex Consultants has been involved with this grant since the beginning and have provided an outline of an agreement for your board to consider. When working with council on this item, council did provide, which was handed out to you today, a revised agreement, and taking Geosyntex as an exhibit to that agreement, making it in the format that council believes is appropriate for this GSA to approve. And so my recommendation is that the board of directors approve entering into the attached updated agreement. I'm sorry, the updated agreement, which was handed out, not attached in the packet, with Geosyntech Consultants to provide services necessary to complete the sustainable yield study for the Tulare Lake Subbasin and authorize the secretary to sign the agreement.
Thank you, Secretary Kenny. Any questions from the board? Motion to approve by Supervisor Robinson. Second by Supervisor Neves. Any questions from the audience? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Joe Nevs.
Yes.
Robert Thayer. Richard Valley. Doug Verboon.
Yes.
Rusty Robinson. Kimber Regan.
Yes,
Okay, 6 in favor. Next item, consider agreement with Land IQ for ET services. Secretary Kenny has
It didn't come from a mirror.
Okay, so Mid-Kings River GSA has utilized Land IQ for developing a monthly field by field estimate of actual evapotranspiration, or ET, that occurs within the GSA for the last 4 years. When the Kings County Water District terminated their participation in the Mid-Kings River GSA as a member, they agreed to continue paying for the Land IQ services through March of 2025, which they did. On May 13th, your board adopted a groundwater pumping measure policy, which established allowable methods to measure groundwater pumping. ET is one of those allowed methods. Therefore, the monthly field-by-field estimate of actual ET from Land IQ is needed for the GSA to manage the groundwater pumping within the Mid-Rivers Kings GSA. The agreement that I just passed out to you, very similar to what was in the packet, but modified to certain conditions that council was hoping that Land IQ would accept. And as of today, they did accept all of the modifications proposed by council. Those include changes to arbitration so that the venue would be in Kings County instead of in Sacramento, changing the signature from general manager to secretary of the GSA, and adding a mutual indemnification agreement. So prior it was just Land IQ was going to be indemnified. Now it is both the GSA and Land IQ. The agreement outlines the services which would be provided by Land IQ over the next 3 years. The cost for this consulting service will run $70,332 in year one, $72,444 in year two, and $74,616 in the final year of this contract. Currently, the Mid-Kings River GSA has not established any land use based or water based fees, so that cost of this service would be paid for with funds from the County of Kings and the City of Hanford, as outlined in Section 6.04 of the Joint Powers Authority Agreement. At such point in the future, when fees are established for the Mid-Kings River GSA, then cost of this service would be paid for from that funding source in the future. That concludes my report, and I would recommend that the Board of Directors approve entering into the revised contract, which has all of council's modifications, which was passed out to you today.
Thank you. Any questions from the board?
One, Mr. Chair. Chuck, since they have excluded the city of Hanford, the 10,000 acres, why didn't we exclude Armona?
I'm sorry, excluding.
Yeah, on task number 4, where it's payment, they kind of there's 97,000 gross acres, and has mapped out the 10,000 acres of urban area, but therefore the net analysis is 87.
Why did they not take out Garden and Armona?
Correct.
I can look into that. I did not have that question on my radar.
Well, they're only charging 72,000, so they must have done something because it's only $1 an acre.
Correct. That's what I mean. There's some other
Yeah,
This
maybe they
time-
didn't identify it, but they took it out.
So maybe clarify that out a little bit,
Okay.
because I'm not really sure why they would do that. And I was going to look up how many acres I'm on a community service district, and and the Hanford at 10,000 is very, very close. So 10,071. I'm just wondering why they didn't take out, Armona, Home Gardens, and the other community service districts that I would consider urban instead of versus rural. And Doug's probably right, because it is about about $1 an acre. So maybe they have made those adjustments. They just didn't put it in the agreement.
Yeah.
But I think I would feel better if it was in the agreement.
Okay.
You can table it, or you amended?
72,000. The math works out, just
Yeah.
the contract isn't. And I guess that's probably a legal question for Mary. Should I just not worry about the legal description and just worry about the dollars?
Well, no, if you have concerns about the legal description, we should look into it and bring back an amended version for you. If you can wait on the payment.
We're not paying currently.
Okay,
But
that would be my recommendation.
but the meter.
We're just not receiving any data from them
Correct.
at this point.
Yeah. And we're going to meet next month.
We can if
September 9th.
there's
Well,
an item.
I want to ask if we can move that to the following Tuesday, because I'm out that 7th or 8th night, whatever night.
Yeah. Like I say, the dollars I don't mind, but I think we should clarify the legal description.
That would be my recommendation, because once it's in writing and the parties have signed, that's your agreement.
Okay.
Well, so we're all in agreement that we'll do it as long as they meet the legal description. So if can we give Chuck direction if they do agree with the legal description to identify Home Gardens and Armona, then we could go ahead and sign the contract.
You could do that.
So we're gonna do we have a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Supervisor Nev, second by Valley, as amended.
Yep.
Madam Clerk, any question from the audience? Yes, sir. Yes, Brian, come to the microphone. State your name and address and your height and weight for the record.
Brian Medeiros, 15360 14th Avenue. The question was, is Land IQ, is that information going to be available for us landowners to access, or is that strictly going to be for the GSA to use for management purposes moving forward?
So my understanding, council can correct me if I'm wrong, but we are a public agency and therefore our data would be public record.
So it'd be part of the dashboard that we set up moving forward. Then.
I don't know if it's going to be part of the dashboard, but you can make a PRA request for that information.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, and we have question audience answered. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Joe Nevs.
Yes.
Robert Thayer.
Yes.
Richard Valley. Doug Verboon. Rusty Robinson. Kimber Regan.
Yes.
Okay, the Land IQ was developed by his two brothers. One brother's an engineer, one brother's a supervisor. And so one is doing very well, one not doing so well. So we'll go to item G, which is financial update and of the Mid-Kings River GSA. We have Treasurer Eric. Morning, Eric. Well, good afternoon, Eric.
Morning or afternoon. Sorry. I'm used to Board of Supervisor meetings. No good news on this one either. Sorry. Amir, you're not going to be the only one on this boat. So I sent out and prepared a snapshot of our financial status right now, as of actually yesterday. It's kind of small. Sorry about that. Trying to get all that information in on one page was kind of hard.
You got a lot of paper and not much ink.
Yeah. Sorry. The big thing I want to show you guys was, Amir mentioned how, one of the first things that we need to do is pay back the entities that have already been covering costs. If you guys look at the account 510105104851298, those are all costs that have been paid by various entities, and I'll go into more detail in the next slide. But overall, right now, our net cash available is actually negative about 70,000. That's stuff that the county has been covering. As part of CDA's budget for the counties, fiscal year 26 budget, we've included about 580. I have it here. Hold on one sec. 588,000. So, eventually we'll start moving some of that money over from the county CDA budget unit to cover that net loss there. But I wanted to leave that there for this meeting so you guys can see kind of what the county has paid to date. You'll see some of the numbers are a little off, and that's just because we're on a 6/30 year end for the county. So the books closed, they rolled over. We're starting a new fiscal year. So that's why some of the expenses are kind of small. When I come back at the next meeting, I'll give you guys a more in-depth detail list of like total costs. The GSA is on a calendar year end. The county's on a 6/30 year end. They're not lining up right now. We have 4 audits that we need to get done. I'm a hope that by the time we finish all those 4 audits, we can switch the GSA over to a 6/30 year, and so that you guys can see apples to apples as far as like the county budget, the city budget. I don't know why they went 12/31 year in, but that's something we can easily fix. But anyway, so our overall net cash is about negative 70. I'll work with Chuck and Sandy to get that zeroed out. The liabilities are kind of big. We have essentially a negative fund balance, which, as you guys know, fund balance is your reserves. I spent the last few months going through all the records for Kings County Water District. I pretty much gone through almost every expense, almost every revenue account. I feel pretty good with these numbers. There is a caveat, though. Chuck mentioned that once the GSA gets a revenue source, we can start recouping some of those costs as the county. We'll have to still pay back to City of Hanford for the costs they've covered, and then Kings County Water District, there's still a portion of invoices they were paying through, I believe, early this year, and that was just for backdated invoices. So I'm still trying to go through that, track all that. It's kind of complicated. We get the invoice, we bill out Kings County Water District or the City of Hanford, they pay us, and then we pay the invoice. So trying to track all that money through is a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. But next time I come back, I'll have a more accurate number. It's just going to keep the liability growing and growing and growing. But we need to do that so we can accurately track how much money we need to repay the county. Just a couple things for you guys to note. Obviously, cash is the cash available. Deposit with others, that's how much money. And actually, it's funny, we just got a check from Kings County Water District. That's the money that they're holding on behalf of the GSA in their own bank account. We just got that check yesterday, so that'll be zeroed out in the next one. Warrants payable is outstanding checks, essentially. So the net cash there at the bottom is actually the cash in Treasury less the warrants payable. I'll go through the next on the next slide. There's a detailed schedule showing what entities we owe money to. Fund balance is obviously negative. The City of Hanford revenue, that's the money that we get back from the City of Hanford when we bill out for their portion of the, I think it's like 11%. So that's how much we've gotten from July 1 through today. Again, I'll try to put together more in-depth, more detailed one so you guys can see. City of Hanford is paying their bills. They're really good. We're getting all their bills paid. So they've given way more than $6,100. It just looks bad because it's a fiscal year. And then the other revenue was actually El Rico repayment. So they do something similar to us where they collect an invoice, they repay, get paid back, and then they repay. It's kind of backwards and kind of circular. It doesn't make sense to me. I wouldn't have done it that way, but hey. And then obviously consultants and professional fees are just invoices we paid. Next slide, please. Okay. So like I said, I've been going back from probably inception of the GSA and their QuickBooks that Kings County Water District had, and tracking all the payments that the entities listed there have paid in, how much they've been repaid. And as of yesterday, this is kind of a snapshot of what we owe the GSA. The top line grant money received. The GSA acts as an administrator for the grant. So we collect all the expenses that are incurred by the other GSAs. We submit an invoice with Amir to the state. State pays us back. Then we have to go and disperse that money to repay the other GSAs. As of invoice 11, which is through March 31 of this year, we reached our retention limit. So the state's holding back 10%. So we've reached that limit. So that's why you'll see we owe CID 143,000, and that's just because once we hit the limit, the state's not going to give us any more money until we finish out the grant, do all the closeout, all that stuff. So that liability will grow by another 600,000, I'd say, and it's going to stay there until we finish the grant monies, close it out, and get that final retention payment from the state, and then we can pay everyone out. The grant seed funding. So this is the grant seed funding and the JPA cost reimbursements. From what I could see, they go back to like inception, like when the JPA first started. All these entities paid in just to get them going. The grant seed funding, again, there was 2 grants that they received back when they first started. These entities again paid in, they were never repaid. So those numbers aren't going to change. As far as JPA cost reimbursements, I'm going to start adding in the county's portion that we've been covering, and then additional amounts for the city of Hanford. But this kind of gives you a little snapshot, like I said, of what we currently owe. That's the amount that has to be covered by the budget and the fees, so that we can start repaying the county back. Right now, the county's on the hook financially for this. In fact, I'm pretty sure you're going to see the GSA in our financial statements this year, because the county has taken on so much responsibility, and primarily made up of the same board. So that's hope the sooner we can get that passed, the sooner the county is. It's scary as the finance guy here. I feel like I'm running around like Chicken Little, like kind of freaking out. But if we can get this passed, then the county's less liable for the fees. But that's kind of where we stand right now. If you guys have any questions, or if you guys, this is my first one I'm doing here, so if you guys want more information, let me know. I'll go back, put together a more in-depth presentation if you guys want next time, or if you guys are cool with this, then.
Thank you. I think it's good what you've done. I think right now the question will be to Amir and to Mr. Kinney is, do we see ourselves coming up with for a 2018 election in the year of 2025, or will it have to be March of 26?
I believe it's going to be May or June of 26.
Okay, got it. So we need to hold on and be nice to each other until we get to that point.
Yeah.
This is going to be, it's going to come from the next part, but this is not a benefit to anybody in this county other than to keep the state off our back. And we have to work together, and it's going to cost the growers a lot of money just to keep the state away from us, so we continue to do our business, and no telling where they're going to hit us next. So.
Yeah, and based on that timing, we can't do advances for that portion of the fiscal year. So the soonest we can probably get money out to the GSA would be next, July, August, once we determine an estimate.
So we do a May election, you said?
May or June.
Yeah,
I'm
June.
probably saying the June, because if we jumped on the general, we might save some money, but those will be things that we figure out as we go through the.
Well, and that's just a 218 too. So we got to be sure that people understand all points of it. So the importance of it. If we fail, then we don't farm here anymore. Got it. I think you're any questions?
Yeah,
from the board?
a couple. And those just remind me. Somebody can remind me the 218. Who gets to vote on that? Who? Not every registered voter in the district, right? It's a landowner.
I don't want to speak to that because I don't have it in front of me, and I would hate to misspeak on that item. But that will be brought to you in a presentation in a coming agenda.
And that's going to cost money too.
No, and I understand. I guess that's kind of what, obviously it's been a concern all along the way is a kind of an outside viewer of this, and then now as an inside viewer of this. I look at that and I see the liability stacking up on the county, right? On the county board of supervisors side, which at the same point in time, the board sits on this as well. And this projected $2 million future budget to take place, and if I'm a voter, what's in it for me to go and say, yeah, send me a bill for $6,000 a year. I want to pay that. versus, hey, somebody else is taking on this liability. Let's just keep stacking it on them. Because what's our recourse? Say the 218 takes place and it goes down in a burning flame of something.
But if state comes in and all the money goes to the state, we still spend the money.
I guess the ramifications are back.
They're going to come take our money.
To the voter, the 218 voter, that whether or not you want the state.
State's going to take 6 million. We're going to take 2 million, and the money stays here with the 2 million. So that's going to be our argument to the public.
Well, and who do you want in your back? Who do you want running? Do you want the state to step in?
No.
Or do you want locals?
Local control.
Right. Okay.
And,
And that's part of the messaging that.
and that's why we might want to do this like we did at the last one that failed, but be there to answer questions before it goes to vote, so everybody understands the ramification. If we fail, the state comes in here, they're going to spend 3 times the amount of money, and they're not going to have anybody to talk to about their farming operation.
Well, and the election really doesn't have to follow the general election, because we can contract it out.
Correct.
So we could have it earlier, because I'm not sure, when does the results of the 218 have to be in before the allocation can be put on the tax roll? That's like May or June, isn't it?
Yeah.
So we really need to probably shoot a little bit earlier, because if we shoot for that late in the calendar, we might miss the 26.
I was just going off the advice of the elections office as to when we would be eligible to
Oh, yeah, don't
do
you?
that.
Yeah.
Does it have to pass with a 50+1 or a 2/3?
50+1.
Okay.
And I would contract that out.
I don't want controversy in my community. I want people to understand what they're voting
Correct.
for, and we want to be there available to show them what would happen if they don't get it right. And then we're talking to the state, and the state's not talking to us now.
Correct.
So that would be bad. And they tell you can't pump, and the state comes down here and tells us we can't. I mean, we've seen how things work out in the state of California. We have no one representing us at all.
Yeah, no, and so I think I would change the Gantt chart a little bit and try to get that probably for January, February type.
One more study session for September, and then hopefully by October we have a direction and we can bring it to a vote by January.
Correct. Probably January, February type time frame, and don't go through county election. It'll cost you 40 grand.
Duly noted.
Okay.
And I'll get you a I'll go talk to Christina, the property tax manager. She's the one that does all the tax rates,
Correct.
and we'll try to I'll get you a definitive date.
Thank you.
Yeah, because we need to go from that date backwards if we're going to get it on the 26th.
Because I believe South Fork was early last year, and then
Correct.
it was so early that we're able to get you guys in advance.
Correct.
And they didn't have to wait till December. As of now, if we do it, like it's going to be next December before we get any cash flow to the GSA. So if we can do it a little earlier, before April, the last Monday in April, we can probably get an estimated tax.
I will work with Eric and see how early we can get that going for.
Very good. So we have
Process.
any questions from the board anymore? Do we have any questions from the audience? Yes, sir. State your name and height and weight for an address. You're a little tall.
My
on
name
that
is
guy.
Mark Toss, 6'6", and the weight's confidential.
Yeah.
Unlisted number.
So the question I have is the 218. You talk about taking it to vote earlier so we can start getting on the tax rolls. But do we need to have our entire plan in place to do the 218, or do we just, if we have a kind of a tentative approved budget like we have already, is that enough to take it to 218? It's more. I'm trying to
I
gauge the
think we need
workload
to
of our
have
committee.
more closer to the exact number. We don't want to miss it by $2 and still come up short.
You have to have an engineer's report.
Yeah.
So that has to be done. So, and I'm not sure, I don't recall how long it took South Fork to generate that engineer's report. Amir, do you recall?
I don't remember the exact, but we can get that going, and you can probably have that in a month or
Okay.
5
Yeah.
weeks or something like
So
that for the
work with
engineers.
Chuck to make sure, and let's work on, when you get the date from Christina, let's work from that date back so that we don't have to miss another funding.
Am I correct that there was a 218 vote that took place and it failed?
Yeah.
Right prior to a plan. So I'm assuming.
Well,
we're
there
assuming-
was no communication with the society
Right, but I assume to answer the question that you don't have to have a plan in place because there wasn't one in place then, I don't think.
But they had a plan.
So there's one existing.
But there was no input from anybody. And so the first letter we got were out of compliance, and that was insulting to everybody. So we don't want to be that way. And I think like today I was told we had 137 people watching this show. I see 23, but really good deal. All right, well, we finished with Eric. Eric, thank you very much. We'll go on now to the last one, which is item H, update from General Manager / Secretary, Mr. Kinney.
Thank you. I just wanted to let your board know that our GSA did receive 2 applications for 2 groundwater recharge basins where water was put into the ground. Our consulting engineer did review those applications, and we did send letters of denial out based upon the information that we had. One of the landowners got back to us, provided additional information, and after our engineer worked with an agronomist on it, we were going to have revised memos going out to those groundwater recharge basins, letting them know of how much of a credit they are going to get, as they both will receive a credit for a portion of the water that they put in. Yeah. So I just wanted your board to be aware that people are sinking groundwater in, and we are reviewing and moving forward with the groundwater recharge policy that your board adopted earlier this year.
Good deal. Thank you.
Chuck, is part of that credit, I mean, is that ongoing? So if they recharge again at a later date, they would still get
they would submit additional information. We would go through that review for that one, and then if it's eligible, it would be credited to their account. Yes.
If it's on that same piece of land, that memo.
So these are not dedicated recharge basins that have been created by an engineered basin. These were just on open land.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions? Anything from the audience? Okay, we'll go on now to board member announcements and reports.
Mr. Verbun, or Chairman Verbun, I was just going to add one thing.
Already today.
I'm sorry. I was just one thing I quickly forgot to add. The state released the draft subsidence BMP, the best management practices document. We've been waiting for some time, and they finally released it last week. And there's a public workshop in Clovis on that for public comment period on September 9th at 3 p.m. at the Veterans Hall in Clovis. So I just wanted to make sure
you'll be there.
Yes, I will be there, and I'm going to drag Chuck with me because if I got to suffer through it, so does Chuck.
Did they did they give any number on levels of subsidence?
They don't give a particular value. It's a best management practices document, so it kind of talks about the things that they're looking for. I will comment just very quickly that in one of the neighboring subbasins, they actually expected you to respond to that document in the GSP, and we're like, this is still draft, so we're still having some of those ongoing issues with the state as well. So I just want to make sure you were aware of that.
All right, thank you. Appreciate that.
I will get out to your board and everybody that's on the email distribution list.
Very good. And anything from our staff? Anybody have a report to make from the board? We have no closed session. This meeting is adjourned. We'll be back. Oh, let's set a date. Can we set a date? Because the 9th will be busy. You gotta go to the workshop, right? Can we do it the following Tuesday?
We could set a special date and time if your board so chose to.
You can have it on 9th. I'm just not going to be here. So, what day is you said we're going to be here? And what day are we going to be here the following week?
23rd.
Two o'clock. At 2 o'clock on the 23rd. Okay.
Then we'll be waiting around for 45.
Okay, this meeting is adjourned until the next meeting. Thank you very much.